Thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a lot of great things you can do with your time this week, so thanks for making an hour here. You're going to hear some great voices, some wonderful stories. I think these folks can talk for hours, so I'm so excited for them to share their stories with you. We've got some great entrepreneurs. A little bit of surveying the room. Who here is working on your business right now? Excellent. Anybody have an idea you're going to launch someday soon? Excellent. Anybody supporting entrepreneurs? And did I forget anyone? Shout it out. Well, I'd like to tell you a little bit about why I'm moderating the panel, and then we'll go through and they'll tell you their stories, and we'll have lots of questions. Would love your questions, so shout them out when you have them. How this started is I'm an entrepreneur of about 20 years. I started off as an entrepreneur inside of a company doing the next thing at Cerner, and then I went to Orbis Biosciences. We started in 2008. It was pharmaceutical manufacturing technology. We sold it to Adair Pharma in 2020. And then after that, I was helping entrepreneurs in different ways. I ran a Techstars group. I worked with over 30 companies. And I started to write down stories that I was telling over and over, and that's what became Make Opportunity Happen. Will there be a QR code to get a digital copy? I've got about 50 copies here. So if you'd like one, or you know someone who would like one, I'd be honored to give it to you. And so I started thinking about Global Entrepreneurship Week, and this would be a great opportunity to get this out into the world. And my why behind this really is I had entrepreneurial parents, so we would have these conversations around the dinner table, so I grew up with this kind of mindset, and I thought, what do people do when they don't have that support system? So you seek that support system by coming to events like this, by reading books, by getting mentors. So could I walk with someone on a journey through a book was really the idea behind this. And then a couple months ago, I joined the Patterson Family Foundation, and we have a focus on thriving rural. So one of the things that's distinctly different about this panel is our voices come from rural founders, which if you're not in rural, that's okay. The point is entrepreneurship happens anywhere. Great ideas, great people are everywhere, and it's just those that want to take it up and walk the journey. So that's my story and why I'm here, and I'm so excited about this panel. Al, start us off with your story, why you started, a little bit about your business, and what you're most proud of.
No, so my name is Al Doan. The company I started is the Missouri Star Quilt Company. My why behind it is I was trying to give my mom a job to keep her out of my basement when she got old. And successfully done so. She has a paycheck and she's fine in her own house. That's good. No, but we started this company up in a town of about 1,400 people, Hamilton, Missouri. If you go north on 35 about an hour, we're up in the middle of a cornfield in the middle of nowhere. We have about 500 employees there, a little over $100 million in revenue. And our claim to fame is we bought the entire town. We turned it into the Disneyland of quilting. That was our sort of marketing shtick. Nobody else was saying they had the most quilt shops of any town in the world. I won that one. Wasn't a hard win, but I got it, and I'm holding on to it. So that's our story. We sort of evolved a little bit from there and continue to find ways to grow and build. But yeah, out in the middle of nowhere, selling quilts.
Thank you, Maria, for having me today, and thanks for being here. I'm Carrie Ann Coker, and I'm the CEO of a company called Vitelli. And I'm a farm kid from Northeast Iowa. My town is less than 50 people. And yeah, we're a solid 75 miles from the closest Target. So I live just outside of Kansas City now and lead Vitelli, which is a precision livestock company focused on driving genetic progress in cattle through the use of in vitro fertilization. And so we bring that technology to producers all over the world.
Okay. My name is Mark Remert. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Green Dot Bioplastics. And quite simply, we make plastics from plant-derived materials instead of from petrochemicals. I was very fortunate to be able to start this company after a long career in traditional chemicals and petrochemicals. My last job before starting this, I was CEO of a $5 billion company, 40 plants in 28 countries, and I thought I knew a whole lot about everything. And then I realized I didn't know how you turn the phone on. and so forth. So, it's been quite a journey. Not to outdo the ruralness or whatever, but if you see my truck, we got a bunch of rain yesterday. I have a 12-mile drive on a dirt road to get to the blacktop. So it was kind of ugly getting up here this morning. But I do think this topic of rural entrepreneurship is really interesting. And I know there's going to be a lot more questions about that. But yeah, there's smart people everywhere, but the difference in resources is phenomenal between a rural location and a urban center. And by the way, Kansas City is not the East Coast or the West Coast either. So while it's not rural, it's still not in the same vein as what we think of as entrepreneur capital.
And Mark, you were living internationally before. How did you get to rural Kansas?
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing with this is a lot of luck and just fortune or misfortune or whatever. The company I was leading in Zurich, we sold it. My kids were ready to start the university. 2 of the 3 had never been to school in the U.S., and so it was going to be a big transition. I had never been to Emporia, where I live now, before I moved there. So I did own a ranch out there, and so we moved to the old farmhouse, which I didn't know at the time had been on fire before we moved there. But, things happen real quickly, and I do think all the years I spent in Asia helped prepare me for that, where companies and economies grow at the speed of light compared to the U.S. And so that did prepare me for the speed of a startup company, I think. But none of the rest of it prepared me for a startup company.
And I don't think you guys really communicated what big a deal you are. Can you talk a little bit about employee size or something you're super proud of? These guys are big deals.
Oh, for us?
Yeah, all of you.
No, we're big. We're a big deal.
He's a super big deal. I can
Yeah.
feel his big dealness.
Thank you. No,
You feel it? It's like
feel
it's
it.
coming this way.
your moms all know me. Absolutely. No,
Oh dear.
we started, yeah, like in a town of 1,400 people, the problem that we have in our town is like you can't keep a restaurant open through the winter. And so we had a lot against us, but as we grew, I mean, we had to find a way to get outside money in. We can't just recycle the money. You know, a lot of if you start a donut shop, you're hoping the guy that works at the gas station will spend his $7 at your place, and then you give the $7 back to the gas station, and that's a small town Missouri thing, right? So we knew we had to get outside money in, and so one of the big things we did is we started a YouTube channel. My mom is a legit, she calls herself a celebrity. It's dumb. But we've got there's like 1 million subscribers on there, and old women throw things at her on the street, and they're so excited to see her, and it's weird when that's your mom. But no, we had to go and find an audience, and we went and built this audience and this following everywhere, and sort of made the town that we live in the character in that story. And so, I mean, from impact, we're the largest employer in our Tri-County area. We're, the largest landholder on accident. We're not trying to do anything with this. There's no Bill Gates thing here. We're just trying to make our town nice. And really, my backstop is even if we die tomorrow, we've got 30 buildings in our downtown that'll stand another 100 years because we tuck pointed the brick, we refinished the inside. Like it sustains the legacy of this town. Where if we didn't, these buildings just fall in. We watch it all around us. These beautiful brick main streets and downtowns just crumbling because there's no family to live in it and make it a home, right? And so that's what we're sort of trying to do is do that. But over the course of that effort, lots of employees, hundreds and hundreds of employees. A lot of families get fed because of the fact that we show up to work and try hard every day. But yeah, my mom's a big deal.
Nice, that's good. That was better. Carrie Ann, I've watched your story since the beginning, and you're so impressive. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, I want him to come to my hometown, fix my hometown. So, I mean, I would start with what am I most proud of about Vitelli. So we're 5 years in, so we're in the heat, in the throw of a startup, in the growth phase of the company. And we serve farmers and producers and ranchers. And I would say that is a pretty traditionally male-dominated field, if you will. And we are 64% women in the company. And so it's a really unique spot to be in. And alongside that, we're about 30% that are Spanish speaking. And so that's also a really cool part. So I claim, because I mean, who's going to fight me on it, that we are the most diverse ag tech startup that exists on the face of the earth. And with that comes, it's been a huge benefit. And I don't say that just for the numbers of saying it, because that makes me throw up in my mouth. What I say it for is because how much it's helped us be a globally focused company. So in our short 5 years, we're serving customers in 21 countries. We have 5 legal entities. We just launched Australia and took Australian market share in a mere 6 months. I mean, so that only happened because we have a global mindset of diverse ways of thinking that enabled globalization to happen really, really fast. And so that's something I'm just super proud of for our team. And it's just made the whole experience really, really rich for everybody.
Nice. Mark, what are you most proud of with your company?
Well, what I'm most proud of is we started this company with some really cool people backing it, and they allowed me to do this in the most rural of rural places. So our manufacturing facilities in a town of 600 people, our research facilities in a town of 11,000 people, and our headquarters is in a metropolis of 25,000 people, but still, 100 miles from Kansas City or whatever. We're bringing science and technology jobs to little places where oftentimes the kids have never really experienced that. They don't think that science and technology plays a role in their life. And we are offering salaries that are 2 to 3 times what the average salary is in those communities. And I'm telling you, when you're in a town of 600 people and you relocate 3 world-class engineers and their families to that town, you have elevated the thinking in that little town. And so the people that work for me, they're on school boards, they're on city councils, they coach youth teams, and they are really, really interested in giving back to the community. And that's a far cry different than an entrepreneur in Palo Alto or Santa Clara or whatever. Santa Clara doesn't need any more entrepreneurs to help the city. They don't have any space anyway, and they got more money than they know what to do with. But rural towns are dying. And, I'm from Kansas. You look at the western half of the state, of 100 counties, or 105 counties in Kansas, 100 of them are declining in population. They're emptying out. And so many of these towns have one employer, the Bunge plant, the Cargill plant, the Tyson plant. And guess what? Those decisions are being made somewhere 1,000 miles away by people that have never been to that town, and they could care less when they close the plant. The plant manager at the Tyson plant in Iowa didn't know it was closing until the morning it closed. And he rolled up and there's a padlock on the door, and they hired a security company to deal with it. So I think as rural entrepreneurs, we have a huge lift. We're not only lifting our company, we are really trying to lift our communities up and give back to the communities and invest in the communities. And that's an additional burden, but it will come. You'll find out in your little town, as soon as you're successful, everybody will know your name, and you'll be on everybody's mailing list come Christmas time. So, and that's a good thing.
Well, thank you for the work you're doing. Really inspirational. We're going to take a question that one of our audience members posted earlier. What is the best way to grow your client base? Mark, do you want to start?
For us, it's trade shows and conferences. we can't really afford to put people on the road to go visit customers day in and day out. So we just had a big trade show. We attended 78,000 people there. It's a way for us to connect with a lot of folks. I don't know whether that applies to every industry, but in ours, that's the best way to be with a whole bunch of people.
Nice.
For us, it's been really word of mouth. And so as we established new locations around the countryside, so our closest location here is in Carlington, Kansas, and we would bring customers to that location and clients to that location, and then they would invite their neighbors, right? And then they would invite their neighbors, and they would have this spectacular experience at the time that they were there. And we really focused on the experience that they had as they were processing their cattle for IVF, right? So what does that look like? We decided that we wanted to be like the new coffee shop in town kind of thing. And so every one of our locations, this is so silly, but every one of our locations, we have biscuits and gravy in the crock pot.
Let's go.
Right? Let's go, right? We have a hot pot of coffee that may or may not be good. And we set up large TV screens so that the clients can actually see the procedure being done real live. So it's like when we're ultrasounding the cow, we can actually see the oocytes that are being collected real time. And we made sure every one of our technicians was, we call them an edutainer, right? So they have to educate and entertain and safely complete the task all at the same time. And what that did is create just like this whole network of a community that happened every other week at this location. And so then these old boys kept coming back because they want the coffee or they want to hang out with their buddies or whatever. And so this word of mouth scenario just grew and grew and grew. And it was an intentional thought process for us. But I think it was overwhelming. The growth was overwhelming at first. Today, we've probably maxed that scenario out, right? We've got all the neighbors. We've brought them in. Like there's not a whole lot more that are coming in. We have to go to our farther radius. And so we're exploring different ways that we can do that digitally to bring that experience to get new clients in.
I love that so much.
I know the B&Gs is what for the win. Yeah.
Like you would think artificial insemination of cattle would be a boring event.
Not when you have B&Gs.
You got like you got little confetti cannons and stuff.
Absolutely.
That's
We just pop them.
But honestly, with quilting, it's the same thing, right? Like quilting, our big shtick for growing customers was I used to go with my mom into these quilt shops, and there'd be a lady doing a crossword. I was like, let me know if I can help you. You keep going, right? And I was like, man, we're in a town in the middle of nowhere. We've got to create like a thing. And so we reimagined the whole retail concept, and we have like themed stores. We have one it's called the Fabric Market. It's literally like themed after a butcher shop. So you walk in, and there's a picture of the cow with like fat quarter and layer cake and like.
That's so good.
It was just, I mean, if you're all right, you guys don't get it, but if your moms were here, they'd be so impressed with this idea of like somebody built the coolest experience you could imagine for this niche that is largely ignored. They're a little subsection of a Michael's store for everybody else, but for us, we said, you are the greatest people of all time. Let us build the coolest experience. And then we did like online. It was the same thing. We didn't pay for advertising until like 6 years ago. So like 12 years, we grew our company as fast as we could handle the scale with 0 ads, and we did that by making emails that weren't spammy. With this criteria of every time somebody opens an email, there's got to be something in it for them. And so that's what started our tutorials. We started making these videos, not thinking anything of it. We just needed good content to shove in these emails. It wasn't just buy our stuff. And so we built these great flows and experiences around just talking to people like we're normal, good people, and literally grew our company as fast as we could handle the growth. We could not bet the farm any faster than what we did to get to where we were, and it gave us like an open rate on 1 million subscriber email list of like 70%, which is insane if you're a marketer. Like it's great, but like everybody that would get our emails, our daily emails sometimes, just knew that like we were doing it for them. We weren't trying to scam them. We weren't trying to get their money. We were, but like we were doing it through love and appreciation of like just making cool experiences.
Awesome. Now, these are some of our most successful entrepreneurs. You wouldn't necessarily think of the industries as, but you can see the success in them. When you have so many things to do, how do you focus? How do you prioritize? What are your top 3 important things that you think about?
I'll go ahead and start. I'll first talk about the process of prioritization for me. One, I call us like a tween-age company. So we're a solid tweenager. Like we have perpetually too short of pants. Like we have braces, glasses, like we know exactly what we want to do, but don't exactly know how to do it, and vice versa, right? And so one of the things that becomes uber important in the stage of growth that we're in is prioritization. And so the rule that we have in place, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Like if it's not a full body yes, if it's not like I can give this initiative every inch of my body, bone, breath, then we'll go. If not, it's a great idea. It's going to sit in the great idea graveyard. And that is the hardest thing in the world to do. And I can't even pretend we're good at it. But like I think it also is a process that works for us because it kind of harnesses that entrepreneurial intuition that a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, carry with them and allows you to utilize that in the process of just being like, if my whole body isn't saying yes to this, then we probably can't afford to go forward. And we use that as a good measuring stick of how to prioritize.
That's great.
So we have a CEO that's running our company day to day now, and he's great. We got a good leadership team. When I was in it, I'm a creative brain, and so I was a yes to everything. I started a magazine that makes millions, and I started a machine quilting department that makes millions, and I started this, and eventually we found I think we were like a $60 million company, and we looked around, we had like 31 business units, and I was like, this is we're working really hard to make this much money. It should have been much clearer. And so as we brought our leadership team in and stuff, a lot of what they're doing is sort of trimming down all the fun adventures I went on. And still I had this friend that she'd made a great company and she was trying to sell it because they ran out of cash on the VC thing. And I was like, this is great. I love this. And I brought it back to our CEO and I showed him everything. And he's like, it's like $2 million in revenue and there's like 7 different income streams. He's like, this is bad revenue. If it was all online, if it was all wholesale, if it was all something, we could do something with it. But it's all too diverse, they haven't concentrated, and it just breaks. I was like, actually, that's a good point. And so for us, as we think about like the prioritization of what we're working on and things, most of it, now I've graduated to a little bit more adult version of that because I have adults in the room. When it was just me, don't feel bad. I just did everything. I did everything, had no prioritization, and it still worked all right. It just wasn't as much fun when we had to like actually show it on the books that it was going to work. So wherever you are, you're fine. You're going to make it. You're going to be good.
Great advice. Mark?
Well, I'd say as a startup company, the CEO has to do a little bit of everything, from driving the forklift to tearing machinery apart and rebuilding it. That just goes with a startup. But I call that kind of the brawn part of the job. But the brain part, I really do try to focus on 3 things. One is building the team, and in a rural environment, that's difficult. Everybody in our company has a college degree, even the operators in the factory. And when you're in a town of 600 people, you can't just put an ad on Indeed and have 20 applicants. It's very difficult. And then you have to find people that want to live in that environment and think that rural Kansas is great. And I can tell you, as a slice of the demographic of the global population, that's not very many people. So it becomes really a challenge to keep building that team and getting better and better and better people. Every time I hire somebody, I want them to be better than at least half the people that already work there. And so that takes a huge amount of my time. The second thing that I focus my brain power on is staying true to the mission. What was the mission of this company? What is the mission today? Has it changed? Have we pivoted? Does everybody know the mission of the company? And that becomes very difficult when you start to bring on additional rounds of fundraising, particularly from venture capital or powerful investors. They quickly can start to suck you into a different direction. And I guess it helps. I'm old enough, I guess, that I can look people in the eye and say, sorry, that's not why you invested in this company. Remember why you invested. And most of the time, they do say, you're right. We got a little excited or whatever. But staying with the vision, staying with the mission, I think is critical until it's not working, and then you gotta change. But everybody's got to be on the same page, and it can't be constantly moving back and forth. And then the third thing is customers. Customers. And we are strictly B2B. We don't do B2C kind of sales. And our other Bs are Fortune 500 companies. And so selling to Procter & Gamble or Unilever or whatever is a whole different customer process. And as the CEO, I have to be the one having those conversations. Yes, we have salespeople. Yes, we have customer service. But if they're taking a risk on buying something from a supplier that's not a $40 billion company, they want to know from the person that's making the decision. So that is an equal part of those three legs of the stool.
Nice. We're about at the halfway point, so I want to entice you. I have 3 books that have all 4 signatures, so these are very valuable.
It's very rare.
To get their signature.
Very rare.
So we have a 3 of a kind, and they go to our question asker. So I'll take a pause here. Does anybody have a burning question that they want to throw out? Yes, and can you say it really loud?
I'm curious how you would describe each of the cultures in your organization. Are you intentional about them and issues or challenges you face?
Great
Yes.
question.
Super intentional. So 2020, February 2020 is when we got the band together virtually. And for the next 18 months operated virtually as an executive team, never having met each other, ever. Hired them all, etc. And so we started this journey with a super focus on what are we intentionally building and what is the culture that we're going to create. And we came up with our core values, and their leadership, endurance, pioneering, love, and count on me. And what's been super cool is the organic nature of how those things have played themselves out. So originally, count on me wasn't an original one. Originally, it was hustle, grit, and love. Because that's what we were, right? A whole bunch of hustle, a whole bunch of grit, and a whole lot of love. We loved what we were doing.
Trying to describe my marriage.
Yeah, right? It's so true. That's a good one. I love that. And what organically happened was this, like, people started saying, oh yeah, count on me. Count on me. Like, hey, I'm gonna go in quarantine in China to open a IVF lab in China in 2021 in the middle of COVID, where the Chinese government is gonna feed me 3 meals a day, but I'm dead set because I love IVF this much. I'm gonna do this for you, Carrie Ann. Count on me. Like, this is nuts, right? That's an absolutely crazy true story. And so this count on me organically happened. What's super cool about it is like, there's this effort all the time to, like, everybody wants the badge of honor to say, oh, yeah, count on me, I'm in, I'm all in. The consequence of count on me is also saying yes all the time. And it's the antithesis of the prioritization problem that we've got. And so saying no became anti-count on me. Prioritization became anti-count on me. And so what we had to do is we had to create a new word for no, which is pickle. And so now, instead of saying no to somebody, you say, I'm sorry, but I gotta pickle that. Means I'm gonna sit it on the counter for a little while, I'm gonna pickle it. And pickle it then became I'm prioritizing, I'm not counting on me, right? So like, that's how intentional we had to be, is like, we have pickle and count on me now that are like converging in this unique dialect that we operate within, but that's the intention of how we're creating culture.
I'd like to say one thing on culture, and that is that it's important to remember culture doesn't come from any written statement. It doesn't come from the HR department. It doesn't come from those silly platitude posters on the wall, soar with the eagles, turkeys, whatever, those kind of things. Culture comes from the way the employees see the leader act. How did you treat them during COVID? How do you treat them when their child is sick, they can't get to work, their car is broken down, whatever? How do they get treated? How do they treat it when they have their own personal emergency that's far more important than any emergency you got to work? Just because the order didn't get out doesn't mean that's a crisis for them that particular day. And so you can put up all the signs you want to put up, and you can have all the fancy statements you want, but if you don't walk that walk every day, then you're failing in that culture that you say you want. Like Carrie Ann, my hiring was extremely intentional. I have hired every single person that works at the company, and even the operators. I interview them myself before we hire them. Things weren't going well at one point, and I let the plant manager go. And I just said to the young people, you don't need a plant manager. What do you need a plant manager for? You know what you're supposed to do. And today we have an engineering manager, a production leader, and a quality leader that when I gave them those jobs, they were all in their 20s. And they are extremely bright and capable. And I said, if the three of you don't work together and make this happen, then I will bring back another plant manager. And guess what? Part of your salary is going to go to pay his salary. That's just the way it works. We've only got so much money. And that sent a message of what kind of culture we wanted. Come to work, work hard, but go home at 5 o'clock and don't take it with you. I'm not going to send you an email at night. There's nothing you can do between now and tomorrow morning. What difference does it make? You've really got to support people, and if you do that, you will end up with the culture that you want to have. Sorry, I got
great.
on soapbox.
That's great.
I won't do that again.
Easy, Mark, easy. Come on. My experience with cultures was probably a little different. Like in my mind, what I wanted with a culture was the startup culture. I worked with Techstars, Startup Bootcamp, a bunch of these accelerators. And the culture that I really envied was like we're up till 3 in the morning, we're all cranking it together, and your kid's sick, well, tough nuts. Yeah, your kid's gonna get sick. We are working, right? Like that was what I thought I wanted, which is a weird thing to try and create in a quilt shop, I'll be honest. But like as we got in there, it sort of dawned on me, I would describe it as like the ownership mentality. You'd hire these people and you'd think that you'd paid them and everything was aligned and you gave them equity and the whole thing. And like, the truth is, everybody that you hired, they wouldn't have that ownership mentality. They're not interested, to what you said, they kind of want to go home and have a life. And it took me a little while to realize that. And then we had our sort of core of leadership, and then we had a couple hundred frontline employees. And I bet if you went into an Amazon warehouse, those guys aren't like, day one, and we're here to solve the world's problem. They're like, man, just give me my $20 and let me go home. I came to work. I did the thing you wanted. And we have a bunch of people that like sort of have their own culture of like what makes a retail store's employees happy is much different than what makes our C-suite happy. And so sort of letting these cultures develop in their own petri dishes, but also like getting the good parts. They have fun. We make sure they enjoy coming to work, and that like we try and reward them and treat them like good humans. But all that sort of developed as we've gone on. In the beginning, I thought we're all going to be around the table with our laptops till 4 a.m. every night, because what would you ever want to do besides work? And it turns out I was way off, and giving room for culture to sort of develop organically, and trying to like, to what you said. My hardest thing is like just letting people understanding that like going home at 5 is an important part of life, and not everybody like the culture that I want isn't the culture that we created, but we still created a good culture that we're really proud of, I guess.
And to build on that, I see leaders as the stewards of the culture, but it comes from everywhere. That's why hiring is so important. Now you sparked back there, and then we'll come up here.
I'm curious if there was a point in your entrepreneurial journeys where you were about ready to throw in the towel, and if so, how did you push beyond that, or what support did you use to move past it?
I mean, barely more points where we didn't want to throw in the towel. I think we're barely here.
Well, I think those gut-wrenching points come frequently in a startup company. The technology doesn't work. You got shot down by a customer. Your best employee quit. But the moment of truth is when your money runs out and you have to think about the next round of fundraising. And that is really typically a very difficult time for everybody. What keeps me grounded is, you can probably tell, the way I feel about the people that I hired. Because I hired a lot of young people, I've watched them grow up in the company. I've seen them get married. I've seen them have their first kids. I've seen them buy their first house. I have some people that never had health insurance before. So I feel like I have made their little tiny American dream come true. And I don't want to be the person that wrecks that. Now, is anybody that's familiar with the farming environment, farming economy, or farming life, knows that can be a really dangerous thing. Farmers have the highest rate of suicide of any industry in America. A lot of that is because you don't want to be the fifth generation guy that allowed the family farm to go under. And we saw a lot of that in the 80s in the savings and loan crisis and the Farm and Loan Association and so forth. So I do have to be careful to not carry the entire weight of the world on my shoulders for every single person and their kids and their spouse and their future IRA and their kids' college. I mean, there is a limit to what I can do. And I probably go too far, but still, if you're an entrepreneur and you're not doing it for somebody besides yourself, then maybe rural development, maybe you ought to be in Wall Street and everybody knows you're in it for yourself and nobody feels bashful about it, and you just go to work every day, kill it, eat it, hope I live long enough that I can retire early and move to the Hamptons or whatever. But I don't think most rural entrepreneurs can really operate that way. You're too close with your employees and oftentimes your customers.
I think of it's such a good question, because it takes you back immediately to, like, there's a couple of points in our journey that I remember. One of them was I'm bootstrapped, so I've never taken anybody else's money. Which meant I worked for no salary in my first 3 years of business, and then adjusted gross income of like $4,000. I tried to get a loan to buy a house. They're like, you didn't make any. I'll pay myself more if I needed it. He's like, that's not how this works, man. But I was broke. We were down on our luck, and then we started. And I remember when you're bootstrapped, you're making decisions. We opened a new warehouse. I went with the one builder that didn't need a blueprint. So I was like, it's a big rectangle. Just build it. I'm not spending $5,000 on engineering. He's like, most of them said no. Anyway, we built this warehouse, and as we put stuff in, right, they're like, here's a pallet racking. We can assemble it for you for another $10,000. I was like, no, I'll just do it. I'll take care of it. I'll save us $10,000. No, we're going to set up our computers, and I was like, oh, it's 100 computers. I know how to do networking. I'll run all the cables. I'll set it up, and then we had to write new software, because we went from like an 800 square foot picking area to a 12,000 square foot picking area, and I was like, I'll fix that too. So I did all this stuff, and then we opened the big warehouse and moved everything in there, and nothing worked. Like, everything broke. No orders went out for 3 weeks. We couldn't find anything. Like, the computers didn't turn on. I remember I flew home to my apartment at the time and called my sister Sarah, who's my co-founder, and I was like, I was writing a blog post about like launching the new warehouse and stuff, and there's a picture of us starting the company, and we were like, yeah! And then a picture of us standing in front of this warehouse, and we're like, it was a little bit like, when you're newlyweds, there's like the jumping Toyota picture, and then picture of you with 3 kids, and you're like, we did it, we're here, we love it, we absolutely love it.
We're loving it.
And I was like, dude, I was happier before. I'm not happier with this business. She's like, we're happier. We just know the cost of owning a business, right? Like the cost is no longer this thing that we'll find out someday. Like we're living the cost of entrepreneurship. And so like those terrible moments, those very hard moments that you run into, they come, but that's part of, you get the successes, but you also get these deep, deep valleys where the world's caving in on you and you don't know how you're going to fix it. Like they often say, if it was easy, everybody would do it. But those head in your hands moments where you're not sure if you're going to make it, like that's the price of being here.
Yeah. I don't have much to add. Just like I was actually lamenting to my board chair the other day, and I'm just going on and on about like, and this, and like they don't understand this, and like why aren't we doing that? And here, like I was just like in the dirt, just digging. And he goes, and this is what it feels like. You're doing it. Yeah. It's never going away. The sharp, pointy part of this job will always be pointed at you, and that's what it feels like to be in the arena, right? Like the Teddy Theodore Roosevelt, but that's what it feels like. And so I think just reckoning that with yourself, because of what all of these gentlemen have said, I mean it's a big burden to bear, and it's what it feels like.
It's a great, important question. We're going to come up here.
You've each talked about hiring those leaders, at least they'll become leaders. What would you say are maybe like 3 key elements to look out for, especially when you want that core team that's going to go on to help you do it?
I mean, for me, I'll jump right in here. I mean, I want someone who's infinitely curious. And this is the number one thing I look for, is because I want them to be problem solvers. I want them to be curious at like, why are we doing it this way? Why couldn't we do it that way? How about this? Where do we go here? Like, why do we do it like this, right? I want that curiosity, constantly challenging, and the willingness to like reinvent ourselves when it's necessary. And so I'm always looking for curious. And one of the questions that I always ask interviewing people is like, when's the last time you tried something new or changed your mind? And I think it's a question that everyone should ponder. When is the last time you changed your mind? What caused you to change your mind? What was required to change your mind? When did you try something new? Gosh, been a bit, right? Like, it's a really important question that stumbles most people. And then, when you find the curious ones, they'll give you this long, drawn-out answer of all the things and why they changed their mind on this or why they changed their mind on that. These are my people. Nice.
I'm terrible at hiring. I hate hiring. It's the worst part of being in business, I feel like. Because it's like speed dating, right? Everybody's like, I'm going to be the man for you, and look at me. And you ask them the questions, it's like word problems, and they're trying to stump them and see, and like this answer all of a sudden means they're terrible, and this answer means they're great. And I'm like, man, this is the worst. And so most of my success in hiring is sort of the same way I would approach dating, which was like, friends that I've known. I went through a phase where I was like, hey, we've known each other like 12 years. How come we've never tried this out? Let's give it a shot. They'd be like, oh, okay, that's weird, but all right. But like people that I knew, and I trusted our story arcs, and I trusted we'd get together, or setups from people that like, hey, well, one setups that I trusted, right? Because a lot of people would be like, you're tall, she's tall, you should be together. I'm like, it's gonna be something, guys. But people that were like, oh, you'd really get along, you'd have fun, you both like to do this thing, or you're into this other thing. And like with hiring, it's the same thing. Our CEO came from, a buddy that I knew, that their family made candles, my family did quilts, and he knew this other guy that was a great operator to this thing. And when we went and hired a big firm to do the CEO search, and in the end, I went with Jeff, the guy that I knew and loved and appreciated the family dynamic and the town and the industry and all this stuff. I trusted that he could do it better than anybody these other guys went and found that I had, three one-hour conversations with to try and trust my whole company on. And so, know people, network, go out and be around them, but then recruit your friends, go find the people that you trust and to that end, it's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all. Like, work with a buddy, have a great couple of years where you're together, and then even if it flares out, you'll have spent more time together working on a thing in those couple of years than you would have if you just checked in at Christmas every year.
Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I could talk about this for a long time, but I'm purposely looking at my watch, and I'm going to limit it to 2 minutes. I don't think that leaders are born or people are naturally leaders. I think leaders are developed. And it's a long and serious process. I also think, I heard a Wharton professor one time, and he completely changed my thinking about this. He talked about, in America, all we talk about are leaders, 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 and we never talk about followers. You cannot be a great leader if you don't have great followers. And so your whole organization has to be built. One day they can be the leader, and the next day they're the follower. And can they move back and forth in those roles? Can they support somebody else when the time is needed for that? And when there's a vacuum, can they step forward and say, look, I don't really know, but I will take the lead on this. And what I do with my people, because I have so many young people, is I purposely give them challenges, or opportunities, however you want to look at it. But it's something that I know they probably don't really know how to do. One of those, I had our 28-year-old engineering manager build a new factory. And I don't think she'd ever read a blueprint, even though she was a mechanical engineer from a top school. I knew there were going to be a lot of times that she was going to fail, and I was with her, right behind her, to catch her before she fell too hard and hit the ground too hard, or took the company down with her. I mean, that's. But she grew so much in a few years, and everybody else saw her growing too. And older people looked at it and said, are you really gonna do this? And when we hired an EPC contractor to build this plant, you know, he was a 60-year-old guy, and I said, can you work with this 28-year-old woman who barely knows which end the doors are gonna go on, but she is a much better engineer than you've ever thought about being, and she's a classically trained engineer. And we hired a guy that said, yeah, I can do that. He said, it'll be a challenge. I've never worked with a young woman, and I look forward to it. And of course, the project turned out great, far better than my expectations. But I wouldn't say that it was hands-off or turnkey. I was extremely involved, giving her the opportunity, but being there to catch her if she failed. And to make sure that nobody criticized her if she did fail. It's like, okay, you never made a mistake? Well, you haven't tried hard enough. I mean, you know, so
Nice.
little different thoughts about that.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm curious how you go about making really challenging decisions. Do you have a group of people that serve as advisors? Do you have a mentor? Is it just some personal intuition? How do you do that personally for yourself or for the business?
It's easy for me. On Myers-Briggs, I am so far on the intuitive side that I can't really even get to sensing and judging side. It's very intuitive for me. But I've also been in the industry for 43 years. So yeah, you would think by now I don't have to go back and analyze every single thing 8 ways from Sunday.
I'm a gatherer and a tester. So I gather information, actually, usually to build my bias, if I'm being really honest, like usually to support my intuition. So I will go and gather information, and then I'll test it. I'll test like, well, what do you think about that? How do you think about this? But and like ask a bunch of different people that I very much trust, a lot of different questions about whatever thesis that I have, and see if I can blow it apart. And that's become a major way that I kind of gather consensus also, but also bring people along to a journey that I want to take with them. But I'm definitely a gatherer.
I'm sort of aligned with Mark on there's a lot of your gut, and I feel like a lot of the development over time is just, you know, if there's somebody that maybe you feel like needs to transition out of the company or something, the fact that it'll take you a year to get to that decision and actually action that outcome, what I'm trying to do at this point in my career is just do that faster, right? Like fast forward to the end, what's this going to look like in 5 years? Let me make that decision as soon as I can. And like in my day-to-day of that is like, I've got a couple of people that I really trust, our CEO, co-founders, folks like that I'll bring in, and we try We try and represent both sides and then make a decision as quickly once we feel like we have enough confidence in the data. Because the longer you let it sit, man, if you've ever had a big decision to make and have just sat with it, it ruins your dinners for a long time. And so, like, eat that frog, get it out of the way, move on to the other stuff. There's better things to stew on.
There's a section in the book called Empowering Decisions you might want to check out. What I've seen with people who can make really quick decisions is they have a framework and they can mentally go, I'm in, or, yeah.
Yeah, even though I'm intuitive, I never make a quick decision. I have a rule, I never make a decision of importance unless I've slept on it one night. And sometimes you wake up the next day and it's different. The other thing I'll say, when you make decisions like we do, when you're wrong, you need to put your hand in the air and say, I was wrong. That was one of the dumbest ideas I've ever had. And if somebody else in your organization had it right, you need to call them out and say, man, I wish we had used your idea. Your people will get it after a while that you are a bit of a
crazy.
Gut.
Yeah.
We always say a consequence of a decision is another decision. I mean, that's a literal saying in the company. The consequence of a decision is another decision, so get on and make it one.
Yeah.
Back of the room.
Yep. So as your business grows and continues to expand, what's your framework for succession planning, especially like for small town in Kansas? You want the community to continue to grow. So what's your framework to basically continue for legacy purposes of business plan? Thank you.
I think it's really, really hard at a company our size. So we're right at around 140 people. And oftentimes, up until now, we're hiring because we need a butt in the seat to do that work. Like we need you to come and do like this work right now, let alone thinking about like what other work you're gonna do in the future. Like this hole is here and we need you to sit in it and do it. And I think we've come to the conclusion that there's a layer within our organization that we have to hire for more talent that has more optionality, like they could possibly do 2 jobs. Or have the capability of doing a different job other than just that seat, so that it enables career path development, probably more so than like specific succession, is just like, how do I keep great people here longer and give them something to aspire to? Has been really, really, really hard when you're a young startup growing company that needs butts and seats to do the work that we're here to do today to get us to the next point. So I find it to be super, super hard at the size that we are, and there's only certain roles that we can really hire for kind of talent versus role. And so we had to be really honest with ourselves about it, and then also be honest with ourselves on how much time can we put towards development. Honestly, in a fast-paced startup growing company, we're not the best at like developing talent. We're not the best at like developing sales talent. Like we've recognized that, so like stop trying. You know, and I think those are some recognitions that we've had along the way.
It's easier for me because my employees look at me and they're like, you're so old, we can't believe you're still working anyway. So they know I'm not gonna work forever or whatever. But as soon as the company got on solid footing, I began to have the conversation with them. Look, our goal is to sell this company to somebody, and it will likely be a big company. And they will probably want to bring their own people, and they will certainly want to bring a new CEO. And that's how it works. That is normal. That is normal for a startup. It's not scary. Fortunately, I've sold several companies, and I have some people that work for me that were at companies that were bought or sold. So they also view it as that is a natural progression. And it is something to be embraced. If somebody decided to pay you $100 million for your company, they probably want everybody that's working there. They are not going to buy your company and fire everybody. In fact, they will probably offer incentives to make sure that those people stay. So I think you don't need to have that conversation on day one when you're, having your grand opening. But as the company gets older and more mature, those are natural conversations to have with your leadership team.
But there's like 2 parts of that question that are interesting to me. One is, is the succession planning, which any good leader that you hire, an indication they're doing a good job is that they've sort of identified the person that says, hey, if I'm hit by a bus tomorrow, it's Carrie. You need to look at her, or this person is the one. I thought that was sort of my job as a CEO before, but like as you get better and better people in around you, they're thinking about this too, and that it's an indication of like a maturing leadership as they've already identified that stuff. The other piece of your question that I think is really interesting for our rural communities is that idea of yeah, what's the exit strategy? Nobody cares about Hamilton if they buy my company, and so what do I do with that? And honestly, it's a thing that I think you just have to wrestle with. Because the way that we structure, we try and make the operations there as attractive as you can, so that if you did end up selling the company, it'd go. But as I think about our next 20 years in the company, it's like, do I sell in 5? That puts all this stuff at risk where I'm going to be raising my kids, and like I want this to be great. So maybe that affects what I'm interested in as an outcome, or how I write that agreement, and how I might protect the town or the assets that I have there. Down the road. And so honestly, man, that's one of the things that I lose a lot of sleep over is what's the right move for this town?
Great questions. One more, and then I got a wrap question.
I'm just curious, have you had inspired others in your company? Have you had anybody go on and say, hey, I want to start my own business?
Yeah. Some of them more than I would have liked. No.
You're creating, they're buying other towns?
No, I mean, yeah. I think there's a lot of that, and it should be something that you're sort of proud of. We have a big consensus in our leadership that if we can graduate somebody, even like not even to entrepreneurship, but this is a lot of our people's first marketing job they've ever had. And our job is to cheerlead them. I want us to be like SNL, right? When you come in, we're excited to have you. You're a star. When you go on to make your movies and stuff, we need to celebrate you and be proud that you're an alum of our organization, and not be bitter that guy got away or that one went and did something else. And so we try really hard to have this very positive, supportive framework, and I think it pays good dividends. It's a thing that we're immensely proud of, that you can start here and we graduate you to like more grown up roles in other organizations, and I think that's the only sort of right role to play in small town America. Like you can't be a zero-sum operator.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We've got one more minute, and I would really like to wrap up with what's the best piece of advice someone's given you?
Measure twice, cut once. Don't cook bacon naked. My best advice, my CEO that I was working with, he told me this last year, and it was really impactful for me. But I called him. I had some stressful moment with one of our people, and I kind of, I was like, I can't believe you did this, Jeff. Oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I called my CEO. I was like, so I kind of blew up on Jeff, and he said, being a leader, it's about 90% just controlling how you react to news, man. Oh, it's like 90%. If you can control that moment, you've won. And that was one that I went home and like wrote down in the journal. If I want to be known for being good in those moments, and that's what I'm trying really hard to do. And I think if you can do that, you've done a great thing.
That's good.
When somebody asks that, the first thing I think of is that Rodney Dangerfield movie, Back to School, when he gives the farewell address. Don't do it. Stay at home. Live with your mom. It's a jungle out there. It's tough. It's tough starting a company. It's tough. All the things you go through. You've heard all these stories. There's a million more. We didn't talk a lot about failures, which if you're around enough entrepreneurs, you will hear some absolute crash and burn destruction stories, It can be really, really tough. So I think the best advice that I've heard is just know why you're doing this. And whether anybody else believes in it or not, you know why you're doing it, what's important, what you want to take away from it. And if you can look in the mirror each day and help get through the hardships, you know, with that kind of a clear thinking, then I think you'll do fine.
I'll go with, in the words of Dory from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming. And I say that a lot every day. Just keep swimming.
Thank you so much. This is the QR code to download an ebook. I'll sit up with my box of books out there if anybody wants to take one. It won't have the special 4 signatures, but happy to give them out. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you.